Thanks for starting our recording there. Welcome, everyone. As you're joining, feel free to change your Zoom name to add in your university and drop your favorite or maybe your most used emoji in the chat. We'll get started here in a couple of minutes as everybody's able to join us. I like that, Chrissy. I don't know.
Not the I don't know emoji.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is what it is. That's what I think of that sometimes.
Yeah. Don't tell
I
you.
use the clapping emoji quite a bit too. Oh gosh, Sarah.
Oh, that's pretty good. Love that. Cute. I didn't know that Maryland is a turtle. That's cool.
That is the most interesting mascot.
It's really cute though.
It is super cute.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen as we welcome everybody in. Again, today's meeting is recorded, just so everybody knows. Today we're gonna be talking about work-life balance, and in very exciting news, we'll be having Jen join us in a bit. Just to go over our agenda pretty quickly, if you haven't yet, update your Zoom name to include your university, and we've been sharing our favorite emojis in the chat. Then we're going to move into a little icebreaker. Just leave us some time to chat about life or anything too. And then Jen will be joining us to discuss work-life balance. We'll have some time for questions. And then as we're wrapping up, we'll leave some time to celebrate successes with our celebrating you portion and just wrap things up. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. I know it's a busy season, but it's so good to have you all here. And then Lindsay, I think you have our icebreaker questions.
Perfect. Yes. So I will echo Annetta. Thank you all for joining us for our UEvents Coffee and Conversation here in December. These spaces have been so essential for us to just get some insider insights, a space just for us events professionals to come together and connect and resource share. So we certainly will leave some time aside for that today as well. Just appreciate everybody being here. I know it's early for some. I know here in Minnesota, it's about 9:30. We've all just had maybe our first or second cup of coffee, but we're going to start off our coffee and conversation with a little icebreaker. Going to start with a question. I would encourage us to do, use the raise hand feature. And if you're able, actually talk it out, but you're certainly welcome to use the chat feature as well. But our first icebreaker question is just around the holiday season. So I'm curious to know, what is a traditional or favorite holiday food? And I'm happy to start. We make those Oreo balls. So it's like an Oreo cream cheese dip, kind of mixed together, mushed up and then dipped in white chocolate, and you roll them up and make these little delicious soft Oreo cookies. They're so good, and it's difficult to not eat all of them in one sitting. So favorite holiday food or traditional food? Not cream and lettuce, but it's a family tradition.
Yeah, I had to plug that one. I don't know if anyone else has that, but here in the Midwest, apparently this is a very classic dish. It's literally just cream and lettuce. It's not for me, but maybe for someone.
Cheesy potatoes. That's a year-round favorite.
So I'll just chime in. So being in Maryland and living around the Baltimore region, usually with dinner, we'll have like one of the side dishes is sauerkraut, which I know is not necessarily common in other parts of the country. So that's something that we love to have.
Sauerkraut. Niffles. Niffles? I've never heard of that before, Jesse.
We call it nifflies, but it's actually
Oh,
spots in or
Okay.
spetzel.
Interesting. Chrissy says old school turkey stuffing, mashed potatoes, green beans. Just a rinse and repeat of Thanksgiving.
Yes, to the dislike of my son, he's 26, I have to say, and he's like, why do we repeat the same meal over again that we had a month ago? I'm like, well, it's like a family thing. Well, that's, of course he wants to change it. So this year we are actually going to step out of the mold and do something different. Because we're hosting Christmas dinner at our house this year. So we're going to break out of that mold. I don't know
And
how the old guys are going to like it, but that's the way it goes.
what are you doing, Chrissy? What's going to be the new entree?
That's a good question. We talked about maybe like flank steak, maybe pulled pork or a brisket. My husband's really big into like smoking briskets and ribs and things like that. So
Sure.
that's where we're leaning.
I was at a task force meeting recently for a community event, and we had a similar question, and many of the volunteers, and they were talking about how they were having lasagna this year as their entree.
I would love that.
Yes.
Anything pasta, I'm in. I'm in all the time.
Peanut butter balls, so good. I could do like one Oreo ball, one peanut butter ball. That's a magic combination right there. Thank you guys for sharing. We have another icebreaker question also around the holiday season. And then our third question will be a little bit of an intro into our speaker. Our second question is, are you traveling anywhere? Is anybody traveling anywhere, either within your state or across the country for the holiday season? Or are we all just staying put?
Oh, I'm traveling, but only a little. I'll go back. My family's all in Wisconsin and I'm in Minnesota. So it's like almost 5 hours, but I'm crossing my fingers. It looks like there's no snow or weather in the forecast yet. So everybody wish me luck, I guess.
Yes. Valerie says she's traveling to Texas from Michigan. That is a haul. Oh my goodness. But some warmer weather, hopefully in your future. Valerie, do you guys have snow in Michigan right now?
We do not.
Do not, yeah.
No, we had a few flurries, but nothing major, nothing sticking on the ground at this point yet.
I will be traveling north. So I'm in Minnesota in the Twin Cities, but I will be traveling up to the Boundary Waters to a small town called Ely, Minnesota. So it is the gateway to the Boundary Waters here in Minnesota, a chain of lakes that can lead you all the way from Minnesota up into Canada. So we will not be out on the lakes, but we will be up in the Superior National Forest, just enjoying a lot of snow and starlight. Traveling back to where I grew up, Pennsylvania on New Year's Eve. Thank you, Anne, for sharing. Any other travel plans? Awesome. So our final icebreaker question is leading us into the topic of discussion today, which is all about work-life balance. This is going to have a little activity. So we're going to make a word cloud. Chrissy just popped a link into our chat. When you're ready, after I ask the question, you can follow that link and submit your answer, and that will make a little word cloud for us. But the question is, what is one word or strategy, so just a small sentence, that comes to mind when you think about the phrase work-life balance? So take a minute and think about that. And then when you're ready, click on over into that link and submit your answer. And we will take a peek and see what we all came up with. So what is one word or strategy that comes to mind when you hear the phrase work-life balance? take a peek at that word cloud momentarily.
There's a lot of similar responses, some different ones. I'm going to share my screen and see if I can present this for us. This is what she's looking like right now.
Boundaries,
Oh, I
blending,
feel that, yeah.
self-care. I love these. Flexibility.
Yeah, taking time off.
Can we submit more than one?
No, you only get one.
Peace. I love that. Impossible. Oh my. I feel that sometimes. I feel that. Absolutely. Flex, blending. Someone put OOO, out of office.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is pretty good. This is really cool.
Fantastic.
All of your different submissions. I always wonder, like, maybe this will look different to us after we hear from Jen. Hopefully not impossible. Hopefully possible.
Yeah. And speaking of Jen, it looks like we have Miss Jen Birch here with us on the Zoom. Jen, welcome. Thank you all again for participating in those icebreaker activities. It was so fun to hear about some of your holiday meals. Maybe after the first of the year at our spring coffee and conversation, we can recap and hear about your travels and hear how the lasagna went, Chrissy. So with that, I am going to introduce Jen and we'll move into the next section of our coffee and conversation today, which is our keynote speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Miss Jen Birch. A little bit of background on Jen. In 2007, Jen launched a journey to boost entrepreneurs' profits. Today, however, she is the CEO of a boutique consulting firm. I apologize, focused on simplifying leadership and empowerment for mid-market company leaders aiming to enhance productivity and culture. She pioneered Lead Well, a renowned public leadership development program where leaders refine and advance their skills. With her team, quantifying the impressive impact of each leader's growth, which averages a remarkable 10 times return on investment per client. In her personal life, Jen is a highly active member of her community, an avid and competitive tennis player, and an energetic and involved matriarch to her family. Some of you may recognize Jen's name as she joined us as a guest speaker for our UEvents virtual conference the summer past. She is an enthusiastic professional and presenter, and we are thrilled to have her back with us today to talk about strategies for finding work-life balance during the sometimes stressful holiday season and beyond. So with that, welcome, Jen.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is my audio clear for you? Good, good. Hey, Chrissy, Netta, I love seeing faces. Danielle. Hey, Karen. Linz, it's so great to see you. I'm really honored to be with y'all today. I really want this to be a conversation. I'm not a fan of talking at people. I'd rather have it be an exchange. So by all means, let's do that. And here's the other thing. I would say that I'm a student of peace and balance and what we can do to get more of that, and curious about what is it that keeps us from getting there. So I'd like to start with that question. What do you feel like keeps you from having the balance you want? What's your current experience of this is what keeps me from? So you could unmute a few. I'd love to hear like 3 or 4 comments unmuted, and also you can drop it in the chat.
I could go. My name is Tiffany. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm very thankful to be here today. I would say for me personally, it comes down to like me trying to live up to societal's expectations of what it means to be a worker, while also trying to live up to my own expectations as a Black woman. So I think like those juxtapositions, it makes it really hard for me to create clear boundaries when it comes to work and life, because for me, And I think my like culture work is always constantly more important than your personal life. And that's kind of what I'm told like as a kid, and my parents were told when they were kids. So I think for
Yeah.
me, it's kind of like trying to get out of that mental loop because I don't want to pass it on to my kids if I have kids. So that's kind of like how I'm seeing it.
Very well spoken. I mean, that is a good point. Those internal expectations that we have, which it's important to even be aware, Tiffany, that you have those, because where we get in trouble is when our expectations of ourselves or others are uncommunicated. And so honestly, even to write a list of what do I expect of myself, and then kind of like, is that realistic? It can be a good self-reflection exercise to kind of compare those. And so do that for self-awareness. But then the second part of that would be, what do I want for myself? What do I want my expectations to be? And where's the gap? Because usually in the gap of what we believe those expectations are of us, external and internal, and what we want them to be, that's where our personal work is. And that's where the, learning to learn is really what I kind of call it, like learning to learn to be better at that stuff. How we perceive that is what can be helpful. Thank you. Who else? What else? Or if you want to respond to that at all, Tiffany, please do.
No, I wanted to say thank you. I found that to be really insightful.
Well, good.
Jen, I think for me, sometimes it's the nature of working in philanthropy. So when you are working in donor-centric worlds, it sometimes feels impossible to set boundaries. Even though it may not be true, it feels like you're risking a donation or you're risking the philanthropic mission. And again, I don't think logically that's true. I don't think that would happen. I think that's what it feels like when you're working in a donor-centric event space or a nonprofit space. It just
really
makes
good.
it challenging to set up those boundaries or say no.
Yeah, there's risk involved with work-life balance because boy, I remember, Lindsay, you remind me, I'm freaking out that I'm gonna like disconnect you guys accidentally by making sure these are in my ears. So if I do, I'll be right back. I don't think that'll happen, but I remember when I decided that I had carved my schedule to 30 hours a week when I was kind of in a corporate setting. Now, of course, my male boss at the time said, well, sure, you can work 30 hours a week. I shouldn't say just because he was a male. It was more about the cultural expectation. He said, you can do that, but I'm going to expect you to do the work you're doing at 40 hours a week. And it was really like 50 hours a week. But I was like, okay, it was probably 20 years ago. And I was like, okay, I'm going to see what I can do. And I did it. There's stories there about like the optics of that and the perception of that and what kind of it did to our team dynamics. But I will say when I was in my own, when I decided I had my own business and I remember I was into a counseling session, I think, and I was feeling like it was my husband's fault. I was feeling like a victim of my circumstances. Like if just my husband could do something different, then I wouldn't have such a chaotic life. And I had this epiphany, like I need to work less. And what I decided was I would move to, and it couldn't just be a little bit, like I needed a big reduction. So I decided to start working 20 hours a week. So I decided to write out what my personal policies were going to be. And armed with that, I had to have conversations with clients. And I remember feeling scared to death that I was going to lose the clients. So it's a similar dynamic. And actually, Lindsay and all of you, guess what happened? When I committed to holding that boundary, my business grew by 12% that year. It was so fascinating to me that I could set boundaries and have it actually get better. I was so worried. I remember the very first conversation with a person named Jack. I was like, Jack, I in my head, I was thinking, I can't meet on Fridays anymore. But instead, I reframed it and I said, Jack, I'm available to coach you on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Which one works best? Right. And I mean, this is something you guys do as event planners and coordinators all the time. But we have to sometimes be reminded, like, oh guess what, Jack? You can change that conversation by changing the conversation. Not talking about what you can't do, but talking about what you can do. So that's one of the tips right there. What can you do? And you don't need to get, I mean, I think sometimes, especially as a female, I've felt like I've had to explain myself. Well, I'm going to do this because of that. And people don't really care. Like, what they really care, can you solve my problem? Can you help me? And if I can solve your problem in a more creative solution, that's more of a win-win. Great. And I think we have to remember that we don't have to negotiate win-lose situations. And sometimes, as depending on our cultural upbringing, we might feel like in order to win, we have to lose. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I just put this in the chat. I said, I think with the new normal of having remote hybrid work, can creep, into what was our traditional personal time and space. Particularly too, if you have colleagues that maybe live in a different time zone, or if
Oh,
you
yes.
different time zone, and that type of thing. So I think that's sort of trying to adjust to that can impact the work-life balance.
It definitely can. Chrissy, that's a great point. And I feel like I have some wise experience around that because I've been working in a hybrid setting really for the 16 years I've been in business. It's so funny. Does anybody remember freeconferencecall.com? It used to be this service. It was like before Zoom, before Skype. What you did was get on this free conference call. And I learned about it when I went to school, at coach school, because we had people from all over the world and they used it all the time. And I started doing some group sessions like that. And it was a cool experiment on listening. Like, you had to listen so much because you couldn't see people and you couldn't see the nodding and all the nonverbals. And oh man, it was so good. And that's what we used to use. But I will tell you this, I really had to learn, like when my office was right in my home, you have to have personal policies. You just have to. And you have to, like, I do little games with myself. Like, I'm going to show you my shoes right now. I have a rule. I call it put my shoes on. I will not walk into my office without my shoes on. If I'm going to work, my shoes have to be on. And it helped me during a time in my life where it was so murky. The waters were so murky. So honest to God, like, I will not go to work without my shoes on. And I like to put nice shoes on. I'm going to put some nice shoes on, or at least I have some household clogs. I usually put those on for like house, casual, personal time, but that helps you mentally, physically feel like I'm working now. And now I'm done working. And I put doors on my office and I shut my office, and I mean, somebody might have said, well, you can't put doors on the office. There's no the frame wasn't set up. Well, guess what? We got a contractor in and I had him drop the, whatever the hell that's called, the frame, drop the frame down, and we got doors and we shut the door and I have doors now. But it's interesting how our mind is limited and thinks, well, it's almost like we have blinders on because we're just sometimes seeing what we can see. And that's really the benefit, I think, of having a thinking partner or a coach or a mentor who can ask you powerful questions and say, well, what other ways could you have a solution? And I really believe that there's probably like 10 things to solve every problem. And we can usually think of about 3. So it's helpful to have people give you ideas and help you see what you're not seeing, because we all have blind spots, especially around work-life balance. Let's see. Guilt. Yes.
I see Sarah Schwartz has her hand up too.
Yes,
Yeah,
Sarah.
I wanted to piggyback on what Chrissy said. Working remotely, having a family, and trying to balance your home priorities as well as your work priorities. And the idea that because I am physically in the home, that I have more time to do more things for the home than I, typically would need to do, and that I'm more, in person available to my kids to run them here and there, and that also is a strain on work as well.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, that is. Let me share a little bit of, would it be okay if I shared a little bit? That was Sarah, right?
Yeah, please.
Sarah, let me share a little bit of my thoughts on that and just sort of my experience, or like what I've seen, what I've done, what I've helped others do. Um, okay, there's this kind of concept. Is anyone familiar with time blocking or defensive calendaring? For sure, Penn State, you must be, because when I worked at a Penn State contract, everyone used that term, defensive calendaring. One of the things that I do, and I am so much more disciplined about this today. Oh, and by the way, I worked 20 hours a week because I had 2 little kids at home, and I was like, I can't get all. And I know not everybody has the capacity to do that, but it was important to me, so I fought for that. And I just feel like at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year or whenever you need to hit the reset button, you need to say to yourself, what is important to me? What are the big rocks? Have you guys seen the picture of, actually, let me share this. This is actually, oh, I don't have it up, but I think I have this rocks picture right here on my desktop. I'm going to talk about it while I look. So one of the things that I do, and you can do this more formally or you can do this less formally, is make sure that you take time before the, before things get crazy. Like right now, I just did a 2-day retreat personally because I scheduled it last year and we had to reschedule it and I kept it. But one of the things I do at this retreat is I put my kids' school calendar on my work calendar and I build my important things around that as best I can. Now, I want to say again, you guys all work for university. So there's going to be some things you can control, and there's some things you can't. You can't control your schedule, all of it, but you can control more than you think. That's what I have found. I would say most people can control more than they think. And it's a mindset thing. And so by putting your big rocks in first, here, can I share my screen for a second, Linz? I don't know if you've seen this illustration, but I really love it. If let's just say these are all of your priorities, Sarah, and you put your big rocks in first. And let's face it, our big rocks are our personal lives. I mean, it's things that maybe a work conference that you're dying to get to. And maybe you have big rocks at work and you have big rocks personally, but I would suggest start with your personal life, put them into your calendar and do your best then to put in the medium-sized rocks, maybe the work priorities, and then the pebbles. And do you see how if we let the minutia crowd out and be the priority that goes in first, then it's going to be hard to fit everything in the jar. But if we put the big rocks in first, and then we plan the other things around that, it all fits. And I know this is like a simple elementary kind of picture, but man, I've done this work for 16 years and I come back to that every year and I get a little bit better every year. I just did a workshop called Making 2024 Matter, and we ended up calling it the Priority Pivot Workshop because every person that I ever have met, the plate's this big and they've got this many things on the plate. And we can take some things off of our plate. Even sometimes your boss, you could say, hey boss, I have 7 priorities and I can have time for about 5 to do them well. Help me decide which 2 are less important. That's a scary conversation though, because if there's not psychological safety where you're at, you're like, ooh, it's a risk. Like we're coming back to risk. It's so good. What do we have
Thank
here?
you. I love that analogy. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Put your big rocks in first. And I mean, whatever way you can figure out to do that. Okay, I have a few tips that I wrote down, but I'm loving the conversation. Do you guys want to hear a few proactive tips from me, or do you guys want to share some challenges and I'll respond to those?
Jen, can I just comment on, I just want to piggyback on Sarah's comment, and thank you, Jen, for those tips. I loved that. I've never seen the rocks first illustration. So I thought that was a really great visual, but I also just wanted to call out, Sarah, that I too feel the heavy mental load of work and life, specifically life tasks, and also experience that just because I'm working from home doesn't mean that I'm not working, right? I think that was one component you were saying in kind of what you had mentioned was challenging for finding work-life balance. It's that there's this perception that because I'm home, I somehow now all of a sudden have all of this time to run the kids places and do all this, and it's not true. So I just wanted to echo and just offer some solidarity and let you know that I feel you and hear you too from Minnesota. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a good point, Linz. And what I was going to say, I mean, you guys, like I said, I've worked for 16 years from home. So I've really had to, I think my husband, we just kind of came out in counseling that I think he's been a little jealous of my schedule. And I didn't realize that, but it makes sense of some of the comments he's made over the years. I've worked so hard to work really hard in my 20 hours a week so I could have 20 hours for my family. And somehow, um, you know, just the expectations of each other, like even to this day, especially now that he works at home too, I was kind of like, what happened with this pandemic? So all of a sudden people are crowding my work environment here. What's going on? Everyone's at home. And to this day, I'll say to him, honey, when you come into my office, please say, is this a good time? He thinks it's so disrespectful. He's like, well, and I'm like, no, it is respectful. Like I might be in the middle of a thought and I can't just start talking to you. And I mean, we have arguments about it. And I'm like, that is my firm boundary and I am not changing it. Like I expect you to say, sweetheart, is this a good time? And respect my answer. And I'm just telling you, sisters and brothers, you got to protect your boundaries like it is a suitcase sitting next to you with $1 million cash. You have got to protect those boundaries. No one's going to protect them for you. No one's going to come and say, oh, Chrissy, I'm sorry. Let me do all the dishes and let me make all of the meals this week because you look like you're having a hard time. No, we got to ask for that. If you need it, you got to say, hey, I am not going to be available this week. I have a mega event week and we are either going to order HelloFresh or you are making all the food. Which one would you like to do? I will help you order the food right now and I'll help set it up. But mama's not doing that or papa's not like, and my husband, I mean, I beg him sometimes to ask for what he needs too. Like we've got to negotiate. I like to think of expectations and your boundaries as a negotiation. Like do not ever think it has to be a win-lose. That's a mindset. That's a fixed mindset. And if you're thinking that, as I say to my 17-year-old, you need a checkup from the neck up. Like we need a little reset, because we got to change our thinking to change your results.
So Jen, I say my 26-year-old, he's at home right now, living, working, and he'll say, so what are we thinking for dinner tonight? And I'm like, and sometimes I'll say, you know what? We are all on our own tonight. Have fun. And that's it. Like, if you want to go to Sheets, go to Sheets. If you want to do a little cream cheese, do that. Yep. I think I'll do pasta, butter, and Parmesan cheese.
Yes, yes. I used to get so furious when I would make a dinner and then my kids would complain about it. Because I'm like, do you realize I planned that last week? I found the recipe. I got the fancy groceries. I was late for my meeting making the bolognese sauce. And now you're complaining that there's freaking mushrooms. I mean, I'm just like, oh, I would go bonkers. I had to really work on that because I was losing my peace. So here's a tip. Is it worth losing your peace? Nothing to me is worth losing my peace. So if I don't have my peace, I'm not going to be a good sister, wife, partner, mother, friend, coach, consultant, CEO, boss. I cannot lose my peace. So define what your peace is for you and work at it. And I mean, listen, I'm in a couple of women's groups that promote education for women, and they're historical. Like they've been around for 100 years. So I'm very aware that women mean, one of them, we just did a 100-year anniversary, and they were like, well, and then the men would bring the ladies to the meeting because nobody had more than one car in the family. And so the men would get to see the other men's homes because the homes were never in a woman's name. And I mean, it was just like, it was eye-opening for me to go, oh, look at all the benefits that our sisters have fought for, and we have these available to us. And it's great, but here's one other one. Laundry didn't used to be done as frequently as it is today. It would be done, like, people would wash their clothes like maybe once a month, honest to God. Guess what happened when the automatic washing machine became a thing in like the 50s? All of a sudden, laundry became this major household task that we did every day or every week. So it's interesting. I like to kind of think about the historical perspective and what expectations I'm putting on myself. And I mean, I know everybody in my house is happier when they get to eat. And so it's very important to me that, and I like to eat. I like to eat healthy. So I have prep cook. Like, one of my blocks in my calendar is have a prep cook discussion on Saturday or Friday with my husband for the next week. And you know what? I had to own it. It's mostly because of me. Like, I want to eat healthy. I mean, like right now I fell off that horse this week a little bit because I've just been eating licorice on the way here this morning. Just gonna be honest. So, like, if it's not perfect, so what do? You do a reset. It's okay. I'm gonna balance. I've heard people talk about this too, like work-life balance. It doesn't exist. If you don't like the word, come up with another word. Peace, harmony, balance. I think people don't get caught up on the wrong thing. If you're like debating if work-life balance doesn't ever exist, call it something else. Whatever that inner peace feeling is for you, call it that, and then work towards that, because it does take some effort. Let's see. I put together like 5 to 10 of my favorite tips. Do you guys want to just hear a little laundry list of these and see if some of them stick for you? Okay, as we're wrapping up here. Well, first of all, remember, no is a complete sentence. Okay? I like to say no, thank you is a complete sentence. Because if somebody asks you to help, you can say, thank you for asking. No, it's not a good time. Period. Duct tape. I joke in our leadership development program, we send duct tape out as a little gift after people graduate from the listening lesson. And trust me, so many leaders are like, holy buckets, I thought I was a good listener before. But really, we just sometimes need to listen and zip it. Like, we can just say a statement and then just see how it lands for people. Okay, number 2, buffer time. I also call this margin. You should book margin into your week. Like, if you haven't booked margin into your day, week, month, year, do it. Like on a Thursday afternoon, I usually will block 2 hours and say, catch up, loose ends, and to just keep it blocked. And I protect that. So buffer or margin time. You've got to, so number 3 is prioritize. You've got to prioritize. I know we forget what the word prioritize means. It means rank. It means this is more important than this, and this is more important than this. And if I only get these done, I'm going to be okay. So I think sometimes we need to do some letting go of expectations. I mean, I have a rock in my office that says done is better than perfect, because I am like a recovering perfectionist, and I need to remember it's okay. And honestly, I mean, like, I wanted to have, at one point I was thinking, I should do some slides for this. No, you know what I have? This is what I have. I have my notes that I wrote out, because I'm like, you know what? I just want to look at the people, connect with them, have a good heart to heart conversation. And it's working just fine, And if you don't like it, don't invite me back, kind of thing. Like, that's what I have to say to myself. Like, when I prioritize and say, it's okay. Done is better than perfect. Okay. Sometimes more important than a to-do list is your stop-do list. What do you want to stop doing? Ooh, this is such an interesting one. The first time I did it, I dared myself, the facilitator dared us to write down, just like, not that you get, even if you put it on the list, doesn't mean you have to stop it. It just means you could. What could you stop? Oh, I just like feel the gut wrenching feeling back like 10 years ago when I wrote down a volunteer gig I was thinking of stopping called the Fairy Princess Ball. And it was something that I started. It was a fundraiser that we did for the Ronald McDonald House. I was so excited about it. But it had seen its better days and it was time for me to sunset it and hand it off. And guess what? It's still going today up in the community I started in. But I'm not in the middle of it. We don't like sometimes we think we are more important to things than we are. Our ego kind of tells us that, and we really don't. It's just like our soul is begging us to stop some things. Um, okay, that was like maybe 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe. So I forgot what number we're on. So let's call it number 5. Here's one of my favorite things. Take some time this season to claim your learning. What are you learning? Like if you like this idea that I said about a personal retreat, but there's no time to do it this year, go to your 2024 calendar right now after this call and block out 2 days and find your biz bestie or go meet one of your buddies from UEvents or go find a friend or go by yourself. Go for 1 day, go for half a day, go for 2 days and block out the important things for the next year's calendar. I even have a system that I can, I have a system that I do a free workshop every year. Next year's is, oh, that was close. Almost fell into my cup of tea. I'm doing a free workshop next year on December 11th from 9 to noon. You're welcome to come to it. And it's a priority pivot workshop. Let's see, what else do I have? Is that it? Well, one thing I want to say is, so grab the learning. I call it name and claim your learning. So I think we did this maybe when I was with you guys last time, but there's this thing called the learning statement, and I'm going to type it out here. There's psychology behind the way it's listed, okay? And it's I learned that I blank. This is the first part. Whoops, I'm just talking. I'm going to make sure I send this to everyone. Okay. Therefore, I will blank. Okay. I'm gonna have one of you give me, maybe 3 of you give me a learning statement from today. It's just okay. And let me say one thing. If you don't like the word learned, because it's not like you're just learning it for the first time, then you could say relearned. You could also say discovered or rediscovered. This is a concept I use with all my clients, and to write it down deepens the learning. So we can't just, if we're just going through life and we're a spectator of what's happening to us, then we won't claim the learning and make it a part of who we are. But if we grab the learning and tuck it into our soul, this helps you do that. Then it becomes a part of you. So you can say, like, I learned that I don't like working on December 21st through the holidays. Like I might say that. Therefore, I will make sure my schedule reflects that in 2024. So what are you learning? Claim it and do it. Claim it. I really think like setting intentions for next year is one of my favorite things. Like I already have a bunch of things on my 2024 calendar and I'll put notes. Like just for example, one of the things that's important with me is loving my neighbors. And I like to do it for real, not just like talk about it and just have it be a cute little plaque on my wall, but I want to really love people in my neighborhood. And so I've done a neighborhood party for the past few years. And one thing I learned this year was I wanted to get more invitations out earlier. So I put a 3-week out note to myself that said, you will be happier if your neighborhood invitations are out today. But I'll put little notes to myself and I'll write why. But that can just be a nice little reminder. And guys, here's the other thing. If next year comes and I'm feeling like my life is too full, when that neighborhood party comes, I can always put it on the stop do list. I'm not going to do that this year. I can let it go. We're a choice. I like to remember, this is probably like my final tip. I can't stand this word, this I'm so busy mentality. I feel like we wear the busy badge in our culture, almost like I'm so busy. Look at how busy I am. It's almost like a success metric. And can we just bash that and throw that in the garbage, that whole success metric? I would rather say, I practice saying all the time, my life is full. I have a very full week. Because what's busy? What does that mean? I mean, we're in charge of our schedule. So get yourself less busy then, get yourself less full, get the time you need for what you need to do to be at your best. You're not, like we aren't victims. We are, we can take charge. We can be intentional human beings and say, this is how I want my life to be. But sometimes, like me, you might schedule too much. And then you can grab a learning statement, claim it, and do better next time. That's the last one I would share. Who wants to share a couple learning statements? Not a couple, like who are a couple people that feel like they have a learning statement they'd like to share?
I can share one. I'm relatively newer to the workforce, so I just got out of school, which is obviously usually we have a lot of time off of school to get where we need to go and such. And so I guess I'd say that I've learned that I often need to travel for the holidays. And so I'd say therefore I will take more time off because for me to show up the way that I want to show up for my family, I have to take extra days so I can get there and be
Yes.
peaceful about that.
That's really good, Annetta. And even this clarification you made, extra days instead of more, is better. Because if you just say, I will take more time off, your brain takes that direction as like, well, that's a general cue. That's not specific. Extra days, you might even say, I will take 2 extra days. So the more specific you can be, your brain knows what to do with that. You got to give it good directions. Nice. Thanks for stepping up. Who else?
I'll go. As Chrissy knows and will tell me often, I need to stop over scheduling myself, particularly in my personal life. So therefore I will try to do better and telling my children no and the farm no. But that probably won't happen very soon until my one turns 16, but I will try to do better.
Yes, nice, Danielle. Can I invite you to reframe a couple of pieces of that?
Sure.
Okay, so this will be the last thing we'll say. So you guys can drop in the chat what's been most helpful today while I work with Danielle. Danielle, you said I need to stop overscheduling myself. Did you hear yourself say that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? When we give that, let's call it a command to our brain, we're saying stop overscheduling. We're talking about overscheduling. We have to say what we want it to do instead of what we don't want. So what would you say? What's the opposite? What do you want to start doing?
Start telling my kids no, I guess, in their activities that they want to do. So for example, my one daughter is in 3 travel soccer leagues. So we travel from east to west on every weekend. We're never home. And my other daughter shows large animals. So we're at a lot of competitions with that. So
yes. Okay, that's good. That's good.
yes.
So let's see. Try this. I learned that go ahead and then say, what did you learn?
Need to start saying no.
How about instead of need to, how about I can?
I can
say no. You don't need to. It's a choice. Is it? Do you want to?
I think Chrissy saying yes. She tells me that often.
So I learned that I can say no.
I learned that I can say no.
Because see, here's what I'm catching you for. If you say need, that makes me as your coach would go, there's some hesitation in her soul. And you're not going to own it if you don't own it. So when you guys hear each other saying things like, I could try to do this, or I need to stop doing this, invite a reframe. I learned that and maybe you learned that you want to, or you'd like to give your kids limits, or you lose your peace when there's too much going on. Therefore, I'm going to think about some new limits around my kids' activities. So I don't want you to ever feel pressured to say it just because your boss wants you to say it. You got to really own it. I'm just teasing you two a little bit, but no, really.
She hears me complain a lot of times. I'm in 3 different states in one weekend. So
and no one's forcing you to do that, right? You set the rules, Mama.
No,
right? Not. I get you. I know. I remember, I mean, I know we do this to ourselves. we do it to ourselves. So, and it's funny, like, did anyone ever say your kid has to be in 3 travel leagues? No. But if that's what you want, that's okay. Then you have to build your life around that if that's the big rock, right? So it's sort of like, remember, we're at choice. So, okay, I learned that let's just wrap that up. I learned that
I learned that I can say no to my children.
therefore I will.
Therefore, I will say
And then you
no.
fill in the blank. Say more often.
Therefore, I will say no.
Okay, let's start with that. Just start one at a time. Just start with these one at a time. It's so helpful. Hey guys, it was a pleasure to meet with you today. I just love seeing your smiling faces. And Lindsay, thank you for inviting me. If you guys are interested in leadership development, that's what our boutique firm does, and I'd be happy to talk with some of you about what that might look like for you or your organization. Take care. Have a happy holiday.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you for being here.
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to have you guys drop in the chat. Yes, I'll drop my contact information. What was helpful, so Lindsay can share that with me. Here is my jen@jenbirch.com. We make it pretty easy. And then here is my phone number, 591. I have boundaries of when I talk to people on my phone and my email. So just know, but I would love to talk to you. I mean, let's talk. I love helping organizations work on their habits, because your habits inform your culture, and your culture informs your clients and your donors. And yeah, you guys have a happy holiday season, and remember that you're in charge of your own boundaries.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks
Awesome.
everyone for giving her your attention. As we wrap up, I want to leave some time. I think this is important for balance as well, for us to have some time to talk about maybe something we're proud of or one of our successes. And I know everyone loves to share resources with each other. So just leaving a little space for anyone to share anything that they've learned or used with the rest of the group. I'm going to paste a couple questions in the chat. Feel free to respond to any of these either out loud or in the chat. So a few things we're asking you is what you're proud of or what you're excited about, or anything that you want to share with the rest of the group. Or if you'd like to respond to Jen's question too and let us know what one of your takeaways was from her conversation, feel free.
I'm going to shout out Danielle. I'm proud of Danielle. I've been in Jen's hot seat before. I've worked with her. She is a mentor and a coach of mine personally, and I know what that felt like and can feel like. So I just want to shout out. I know that's not celebrating me or my university, but I am so proud of you as a fellow UEvents steering committee member and just general member for being vulnerable in that space and taking the time to work through some of those things. So I'm celebrating you, Danielle.
That I found that actually very helpful, just how she worked through that with Danielle. That was a really good, like, in the moment, real time exercise. So I appreciated that very much.
I can chime in with something kind of unrelated to the conversation we just had, but this year our team made an effort to make sure that we are like kind of refreshing ourselves and reminding ourselves of like emergency preparedness for events, which is something that, you know, we had kind of, I wouldn't say like overlooked, but you know, it's something that kind of gets like put to the side when you're talking about more exciting things related to event planning. So we made sure that other members of our team had crowd management training with the fire marshal at our school, and just like kind of getting over that administrative hurdle. Like, it's something that, you know, always kind of falls to the bottom of the list, but the fact that we were able to do that this year, and make sure that we're trying to like refresh ourselves and stay on top of that. I just feel like it's really important. So I'm just glad that we were able to check that off the list.
I found the event to be really helpful, like Jen speaking about everything. And I wanted to share a book that I'm currently reading that I think really tied into like what Jen was talking about. It's called Why Did Someone Not Tell Me This Earlier? Why Has Nobody Told Me This Before? And basically the book just talks about like gives you like toolkits to help your mental health and like how I feel like especially if you identify as a woman, it can be really hard, being in the job market and trying to figure out your place, as well as trying to ensure that you are creating clear boundaries that don't override like, who you are as a person while also recognizing all of your social identity markers. So this book has been really helpful for me. I definitely recommend it. So yeah, maybe you can use your learning and development stipend to pay for it. Always a big advocate for that.
Thanks for sharing that, Tiffany. I definitely will be looking for that book. We have just a couple minutes left, so I am going to move us into the wrap up, even though I would love to hear more about what is going on. That's amazing. Please either, feel free to shout that out on our Facebook page, what's happening. That is a good space for us to share resources or just celebrate what's happening at your university. And that touches most, if not all, of our UEvents members. But as we move into our wrap up, I just wanted to thank again everybody for being here and being present and engaged in our coffee and conversation today. We do not have the calendar for 2024 yet. Our steering committee is kind of working diligently on seeing what that might look like. Something you can anticipate for all of our members is to have an individual outreach from one of our steering committee members at the beginning of the year. We just want to take a moment to kind of see what's working for everybody, what isn't working, what you're hoping for out of UEvents. And certainly we're going to put the plug out there again that the more people we have on our steering committee, the more robust, the more representation across universities and across professionals, the further we can move the needle on UEvents and the more we can do for our membership. So if that's something that feels like an intention you want to set for 2024, please reach out. We would love to have you on the steering committee. We will work to get this coffee and conversation up on YouTube. There will be a newsletter coming out. If you have something at your university or a person at your university you'd love to have spotlighted, we'd love to showcase you in our UEvents newsletter. And we just appreciate you being here and wish you the best of the rest of 2023. Have a lovely day, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.